Well, the clock just turned 5:30, although we no longer have the bell to remind us. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mr. Wilson, are you here, and will you please call the roll?
Looks like he's not here, Margaret. I'll go ahead and call the roll for us.
Thank you.
Sure. Bernie Garitas,
Here.
Margaret Clemens,
Here.
David Warren,
Here.
Amy Thompson,
Here.
Julie Thomas,
Here.
Jim Stainbrook,
Here.
Jerry Pittsford, Tron Enright Randolph, and Jeff McKim said he'd be late. I think Jerry and Tron are going to be a couple minutes late, but I'll mark for the record we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Well, would you please introduce the evidence, Ms. Nestor?
Sure. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended, the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Please call the roll.
All right, Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
David Warren,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
Okay, I'll note Jerry, Tron, and Jeff are still not on the call yet.
Jackie, you didn't call me.
Oh, Bernie Garitas, sorry.
Yes.
Thanks, Bernie.
There's a county council meeting that's ongoing.
Yes, I think for the record, Tron just entered the call, so.
And so did Mr. Wilson. Okay. Well, I have discussed with both Jackie and Tammy that I have some editorial changes, not editorial, but maybe close word changes to make in the minutes. So I don't know if we can approve the minutes subject to my coordinating with Barb on some of the kind of near words that were in the typed up version, or should we just, what do you recommend we do, Jackie?
Do you have corrections for all the minutes, Margaret? Or I know we have May, June, and July.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think it's difficult with the Zoom meetings and also the enunciation. Maybe perhaps not everyone can be as clear when they're speaking over Zoom. And so I just noticed some strange words that don't necessarily pertain to the subject of the minutes. So how do we proceed with that?
I mean, let's go ahead and I'll send you those. I don't know how substantive those are, and I'd like to make sure everyone gets a chance to review them. So we'll just send those to you, Margaret, and then we'll approve them next month.
Okay, then I move that we kind of table the minutes of the May 27th, June 4th, and July 21st meetings until I'm able to coordinate with Barb, the office manager, and she'll send those out for our next meeting.
I second that.
And should we call the roll on that, Jackie? Or Larry?
Okay. Robert Clemens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim is not on the call yet, I assume. Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Julie Thomas, Amy Thompson,
Yes.
David Warren.
Yes.
That approves 7-0.
Yeah, I'm a yes. Sorry, my
sorry.
temporary unmute didn't work.
Make that 8-0.
Thank you.
Well, tonight's agenda has no administrative business and no unfinished business. Shall we move straight to new business? And in which case, the first case before is case number 2007-REZ-07. It's the Woods rezone from IP to Ag RR. And this is a preliminary hearing with a waiver of final hearing requested. Is Mr. Myers here to present the case?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, let's get into it. This is the Tammy Woods rezone from institutional public to agricultural rural reserve. The petitioner requests to rezone approximately 5.65 acres from institutional public, or IP, to agricultural rural reserve, AG-RR for short. Should the rezone be approved, the petitioner expects to sell the property to new owners who then intend to construct a new detached two-car garage through the standard improvement location permit application process. The property currently contains an approximate 1,092 square foot single-family residence, 2 utility sheds, and above ground pool with a deck. The 2 utility sheds and above ground pool with a deck had previously not received permits, and they were therefore required to apply for after the fact permits. Those permits have now been approved, but are pending issuance until the rezone petition is decided. Due to the existing IP zoning, any owner of this property would be required to petition for either a rezone or a use variance in order to permit the addition of a new residential accessory structure like a two-car garage. At one time, this property was owned by the gas utility company, Indiana Gas Company, which is likely the reason why the current zoning of IP exists. So it is located at 3571 East Boltinghouse Road in Bloomington Township, Section 12. It's currently zoned IP. The zoning around the petition site is AG-RR, along with other areas designated as IP. The comprehensive plan has it designated as rural residential, and the Makua Phase 2 plan has it designated as rural transition. Some site conditions and the slope map here on your screen. The property exhibits access off of East Boltinghouse Road, which is designated local. The petition site currently contains that single family residence, the 2 utility sheds, and the above ground pool with a deck. The petition site also contains a substantial amount of area that exhibits slopes greater than 15%, as you can see in the slope map. There are no known karst features on the site. There's no FEMA floodplain, and the site primarily drains to the south, and it is serviced by septic. Here we have some site photos. This is just a zoomed in picture of those structures that are on the site. The next photographs are just aerial images, kind of showing you the petition site there. This one on the screen now is the petitioner letter and consent letter for representation. And then these next 2 pictures are of the Chapter 804 design standards. I have highlighted here or encircled the IP design standards, and then on the next slide, the AG-RR design standards. So there will be a change in these design standards for the property. And like I stated before, any new permits that come in for the property after this rezone, if it is approved, will have to abide by those new standards and go through the improvement location permit process. I spoke last time at the administrative meeting. If anybody wanted to see the change in permitted uses for this rezone, I didn't get any feedback from that. I can certainly pull that up if we want to go through any of those. We don't have to. But overall, staff recommends approval based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway and Drainage Engineer reports. I will now take any questions.
I have one question. If I might, when I was looking at this, I noticed that this is one piece out of a larger area that is to the east and northeast. If you go to, there you go. You knew who I was talking about. Good job, Drew. Thank you. Are the other pieces, parcels in this area surrounding this still being used as institutional public, or has this all been phased out? Is this step 1 in a multi-phase that we're going to see?
I know that the parcel immediately to the south across East Boltinghouse Road is currently the Indiana Gas Company. So they will likely retain that zoning classification. The two parcels that are zoned IP to the east, I believe those may be vacant right now. So those might be picked up when we go through the rezoning process for the new ordinance.
Okay. And that was going to be my follow-up question. So you're on point tonight, Drew. Thank you. I was just going to ask if we were going to need to address the remaining properties. Thank you very much for a very good answer.
I also must concede that Jackie is in control of the PowerPoint. So
Okay, Drew, you didn't have to admit. Okay, Dave and then Julie.
Yeah, so related to that question, yeah, I might have asked this at the admin meeting. I apologize if it's redundant. But are there a lot of sort of orphaned zones like this where it's no longer being used for whatever the original purpose was? And can we kind of wholesale rezone those in the CDO update process?
Yes, there are a lot of zones that are outdated and haven't been reviewed in full probably since 1997. So we are trying to capture those by looking at some of the assessor's records and verifying what the property is currently used as versus what it's zoned. And so, yes, we'll be able to bulk rezone some of the areas that are in need of updating to what the current standards are. Yeah. And then Julie had a question.
I just wanted to verify that, and I think I asked this at the previous meeting as well, that the gas company itself was notified as part of this process, just to make sure that there's no issue. Clearly, building a house on this property means that there isn't an issue, but I just wanted to verify that.
yeah, as the standard procedure for doing a rezone petition, the surrounding parcels, I believe it's 2 parcels out or 660 feet, whichever is leased. Those properties, the owners of those properties get notification.
Any other questions from Plan Commission members? Bernie?
Briefly to follow up on Dave's question, which was a good one, there's also several overlay zones that when we get into the rest of the ordinances that we'll be probably making changes to, like the business industrial overlay over on the west side. So there's several locations, zoning or overlays that are in that category Dave brought up.
Okay, great. Well, I know that Betty is here and that she would like to address the Plan Commission. Would you like to speak, Betty?
Betty, you're on mute. So if you see the screen, I'm asking you to unmute, just press OK.
Yes, I think they covered everything. And I sent certified letters out to everybody that they gave me a list of from the department in there. I think everything's been said. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, and is there anyone else present who would like to speak in favor of this petition? And if there's no one, is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? And if there's no one, we come back to the Plan Commission. And if there's any further discussion, please let us know.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion when ready.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Pittsford.
Are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, I was going to give a pause there. In case number 2007-REZ-07, a request for rezone from industrial public IP to agricultural rural reserve, AG-RR, and a request for a waiver of final hearing. This is a piece of property located at 3571 East Bolting House Road, currently zoned IP. It consists of 5.65 acres plus or minus in the Bloomington Township. I move approval of this request along with approval of waiver of final hearing.
I second that positive recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
I will. The vote is on a petition number 2007-RAZ-07, Woods request to amend the zoning map from IP to Ag RR for the property located at 3751 East Bowling House Road. Again, the zoning would change from institutional public to Ag RR. The motion is to send a favorable recommendation to the Monroe County Commissioners in regard to the amendment of the zoning map, subject to the conditions set forth in the report. Tronite Wright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim is still absent, I assume, unless I hear differently. Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
David Warren,
Yes.
Ira Clements.
Yes.
The motion is approved by 8-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. We're moving forward to case number 2008-SPP-03, the Holland Fields Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Phase 2 and 3. And Ms. Behrman, would you please present the case?
Sure thing. Right, so Jackie, you can just scroll with me here. This is located at 790 East Holland Drive, which is in Perry Township, Section 21. It's approximately 14.18 acres and is 35 parcels. And it also intersects with Crestline Drive. So here's the location. It's just south of the city of Bloomington and kind of just off of South Walnut Street Pike. The zoning is RS 3.5 Pro 6. The developer chose not to use the Pro 6 overlay, but this does allow them to do lot sizes of 0.22 acres by right. And the comprehensive plan has it as Makua mixed residential. Okay, so the site conditions, this is a little bit of an older map that did include phase 1 borderline property line, which is mostly north of East Holland Drive. And the slope map there down in the right, bottom right corner just basically shows this is a very flat site, slopes less than 12% actually. And just in case we want to reference the larger picture, there's some floodplain over to the east and showing some of the other subdivisions in the area and the topography, and potential future connectivity. So this is a little closer to what we're seeing today. First phase was platted back in January of 2019. They continued to do work to help develop up phase 2 and phase 3. Unfortunately, the preliminary plat expired. There was a staff visit. Stormwater inspector was doing an inspection and discovered a sinkhole had opened up on the property there located at the southern end of South Rotterdam Drive in the red circle there. Next slide. So just a brief timeline. Holland Fields Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat was originally approved July 19th in 2016 under that specific petition there, 2016-SPP-01, which is Exhibit 1 in the packet. Exhibit 3 in the packet. There was a preliminary plat extension granted under Chapter 854-7K. A plat will expire after 2 years. So they did ask for that extension. They were issued that under the Plan Commission, and then it expired July 19th, 2020. During that time, we had Holland Drive was reconstructed in 2018. Once they got the road corrected, phase 1 underwent the final platting, which we saw in that previous slide, the recorded plat from January 17th, 2019. And then we saw the sinkhole develop, and a grading permit was issued July 30th, 2020, and they began that karst remediation, which was completed July 16th, 2020. So the next slide. So Patriot Engineering and Environmental was hired by the developer to kind of propose remediation for the sinkhole that developed on site. It was approved during the grading permit process, and then they began the work. Terry Quillman spoke a little bit of this during the PC admin meeting. He's the MS4 coordinator, and he was able to oversee part of the process, but not all of it. So if you have more questions regarding the sinkhole remediation, you should direct those towards him. Next slide. So as a result of the sinkhole that developed, we realized that the road kind of was going to be impacted that went to the south. So the plat committee met on September 17th, 2020, and with a vote of 3-0, they decided that they wanted to require the developer to keep connectivity and keep it in such a way that no waivers would be requested for future developers should they want to develop to the south. And so this required a little bit of a design adjustment. The road was kind of pushed a little farther west. The cul-de-sac was kind of moved up north a little bit, but this does allow for a full 50-foot right-of-way with complete, this would be able to fit sidewalks, street trees, infrastructure for the most part. We would come to infrastructure like in the future when that would get connected, but we do have the 50-foot right-of-way. And it did impact a little bit of the common area, which is one of the drainage bioretention areas. Terry Coleman did sign off on that. We can, next slide. I did include in the staff packet a summary of changes that from the previous time that this was approved in 2016 versus now. So we do see that small road change that we saw before, and this impacted just a little bit of increase and decrease on those lots just within that area, but all the height, bulk, and design standards were still, fine. And the cul-de-sac, again, it terminates farther north. And there are a little bit of minor grading and drainage changes to the common area lot 33. Next slide. So just basically looking here, the next few slides are directly from the preliminary plat that staff reviewed and feels that meets most all of the standards. So again, the part in the circle there is the most part that was impacted with any changes. And a lot of this looks exactly the same. They're still offering the 2 common area lots, and there are 33 other, let's see, is it 33 lots? It's 35 parcels, 2 of which are common area lots. Next slide. And with this one, I just kind of pull out, there's one of the common area lots that Jackie's pulling out. Again, all sidewalks are being designed and to be installed. Street trees were met. They're not asking for any waivers in this subdivision. The waivers that were previously asked for in phase 1 mostly had to do with Holland Drive being just shy of a 50-foot right-of-way. Next slide. This one's just kind of highlighting the common area, the drainage basin that Terry reviewed and signed off on, and feels that the design should be adequate to meet his stormwater standards. So drainage engineering comments went out, and I put these here in this slide. Stormwater reviewed the revisions. Due to recently exposed sinkhole, finds the detention edits satisfactory. The sinkhole was filled under the guidance of Patriot Engineering. Terry didn't witness the process, but reviewed Patriot's report, and the process seems to be appropriate. The highway engineering comments are those 6 points listed there, one of which I was gonna pull out in that number 6. Let's see, I'm sorry. Number 2, no heavy construction traffic is permitted on East Crestline Drive. All heavy construction traffic shall egress from East Holland Drive. This is actually another change that was made by the developer, but I did have one person call in on the petition. That was the only person that called in on this petition. She lives on Crestline Drive, and she was happy to hear that this was possibly going to be a condition of approval. All right, next slide. These were just the highway engineering analysis that was sent out. I just wanted to put it in here for the record. And so at the Plan Commission admin session, aside from discussing drainage extensively and karst features extensively, and I hopefully some of you had a chance to look at the link that I sent within the staff report from that presentation that was done at the Drainage Board. There was also a question of if we could do an extended maintenance bond of some sort for the sinkhole, just to kind of protect the homeowners there. And, you know, after talking with the highway department, the maintenance bond is not an option for that sinkhole conservancy area because it's not within the public right of way. And we don't have a mechanism to bond outside of a public right of way. So this, you know, it doesn't seem to make sense to put it in the, to put the SCA within the county's hands. So the other option that Dave Schilling, we spoke with Dave Schilling, and he had thought that there might be two options here. One is to require a written commitment that the homeowners association maintain the SCA, or to require written commitment that the HOA put funds aside specific to mitigating impacts of SCAs on private property. And he did mention that prior to conditioning the written commitments above, the petitioner must state their willingness and understanding to do so. So just keeping that in mind. Next slide. So the staff recommendation, staff gives a recommendation of approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat for phases 2 and 3 based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and drainage engineer reports with the following 15 conditions. The first 14 conditions are the ones that we really just carried over from the 2016 petition. Jackie, if you go to the next slide. The one that was added, and this was kind of recommended from conversation with Dave Schilling, was to require deed covenant for the lot with the sinkhole. Person who owns the lot is responsible for complying with Chapter 829 of the Monroe County zoning ordinance, meaning they can't build in the sinkhole, they can't fill it in. So, and then there are, after a result of reviewing the highway and drainage engineer reports, mostly the highways report, there are a few items in there that we should probably add as conditions of approval in there as well. And I think that concludes my presentation. And if you, Jackie, if you want me to list and read all of those 15 conditions, let me know and I will do that for the record. But it's a lot.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas, should all of those 15 conditions be read into the record or when we approve it, or can we just make it a matter of fact here in the refer to it as the presentation and the report that's filed? I think
you're on mute, Julie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Madam Chair.
Sorry, that's a question for legal, but
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pittsford.
Oh, I'm sorry, I walked on Julie. My apologies, Julie. As a matter of experience, I think that it's in the written record, and I think we're fine without reading them all.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. So that being said, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
so I have a few questions, and if you'd like, I can drop one now and then you can come back to me. I'm just trying to reopen the packet. It closed on my other computer here. But the no parking that was listed as sort of a new condition, on the earlier slides. There you go.
Yeah, right there.
No parking signs. Where is that going? On what streets is that going on?
I think Paul is here. I think it's cul-de-sacs, but let's let him go on the record for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the cul-de-sacs. There's a request for no parking on the cul-de-sacs.
Is that because of emergency vehicles?
Well, school buses, yeah,
Right.
garbage trucks, emergency vehicles, right.
Snow removal.
Right.
Snow removal.
But
correct.
not on the actual street itself in front of the house.
No, just
Outside of
on
the
the cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
So is there sufficient room on the streets? Because they didn't ask for a waiver, it seems like their streets are the correct size, the correct width, right? They're standard width streets, right?
Yeah, they're 30 feet back to back a curb or 26 feet of pavement.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Warren, I can't see everyone, so Jackie, if you can help, that would be great. Mr. Warren?
Yeah, so I just had a question on the potential additional conditions, two related to the HOA, and then there was another potential condition related to a deed covenant. Were those sort of recommended by county legal as, pick one of these three, or were they recommended as, you could pick one of these two that are on the screen here plus the deed covenant?
I am going to let Jackie help out with this one because she had the actual conversation with Dave. Unless is Dave here? I didn't see him earlier.
Dave is here. Let me tell you first off that the condition to add the deed covenant, Dave, that's kind of a standalone. You should do that just to notify the person buying the lot. There's a conservancy area on there. The question about the written commitment, and Dave could chime in here, is more so to address the fact that there was a concern about a bond or some sort of funding mechanism for that private property owner if that sinkhole were to create some sort of issue in the future, that there would be a funding mechanism in the HOA.
Okay. Thank you.
Or anyone else?
Yes, I'd have a follow-up for that if I might.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford.
And thank you, Jackie, for that answer, and Dave. One of the things that occurred to me today, based on a few years of experience here, we have now gotten to the point where we've dealt with the, sinkhole conservancy area over and over again. And how do we make sure that it's going to be guarded in perpetuity? And it occurred to me today that one of the things that we do when we bring in these sort of situations with a road, we always make sure that the road's built to county standards. Do we see a point in time where we are going to be able to create county standards for sinkhole conservancy areas so that they're constructed in a way that the county is comfortable that they are done in a way that's sufficient and all drainage is sufficient? And I suppose this is a question for our drainage engineer, so that when we're done, we can say, okay, you've built this to county standards. This is what we expect. This is what we think will last. And if it fails somewhere 20 or 30 years down the road, then the county can be responsible for it, as we are with roads. Are we anywhere near that? Are we going to continue to constantly ask for a bond or some kind of homeowner association agreement, which is flimsy as the paper it's written on, in terms of maintaining these things? And I hate to be that guy, but tonight I've just decided, I've seen this so many times, I'm willing to be that guy.
Thanks, Jerry. Terry, do you want to answer that? And then I've got Julie and Jim Stainbrook with questions.
Jerry, that's a big question there. One of the things that I'm looking at in the new ordinance is to, first of all, it's my feeling that we don't want to allow any kind of construction, whether it's under drains or even minimal construction within the SCA. I'm reviewing what's an appropriate SCA widths right now. We've got 25 and 50, but is there something more or less appropriate? once we define that in the ordinance and our technical standards, that would give us a boundary for which we're looking at them. In my opinion, we should not be allowing any additional drainage to go into the sinkhole other than what was going there before. And I think we should exclude all impervious surfaces from going into it. And what was the other things that have come to my mind? Providing outfalls for the sinkholes, because these are all going to open up and then close. And I think there needs to be an emergency routing for when that plugs and where's the water going to flow. There should be an easement for that to an appropriate outfall. These are all things that I'm working with now to define in the technical standards of the new ordinance. Those are the things that come to mind, but in my mind, with the slopes that are in this county, there's no reason why we can't bypass any drainage upstream from them, around them, and limit what we should be allowing into those sinkholes, which I feel should be nothing other than the SCA area. So that's the direction I'm trying to go. I don't know if I answer your question directly or indirectly, but.
Well, Terry, I think you probably did as well as you could for a spontaneous pop quiz here. After, over 20 years in the classroom, I realized that I really put you on the spot, and I didn't mean to do that.
No, that's all right.
In terms of a final exam, but this is definitely a pop quiz for the final exam. Today, it just rang with me so solidly. And I can tell you, I have a 7-acre lot here adjoining my property that I purchased. And I had a swallow hole open up, and it's just continued to grow. And I treat it with respect because I know so much about this, thanks in large part to my experience on the Plan Commission that the typical property owner doesn't have, and which, with no respect to developers, which they may have but disregard. But at some point, I just feel like, and I don't know where the science is on this, and I'm truly relying on you, and it may not exist. The science may not exist for this kind of development on karst topography like we have here. But I cannot help but feel like at some point we have to come up with a method and a means of holding developers responsible for mitigating the negative effects of sinkhole conservation areas and for anticipating those events that can occur in a karst topography. And I don't know if that's possible, but heavens, we need to find some way to at least start that conversation.
I agree. There's 2 points you made there that I'd like to expand on. First is in the last just couple of years, I've been called out on 4 different sinkholes that just opened up. One was in a guy's yard. He'd been mowing the grass over it the day before or whatever, and there was no sign. And I've had a couple like that. I've had one that opened up on the edge of one of the little county roads that we tried to fill or seal. That's another thing I'm trying to address is what's an official county policy for a sinkhole that opens up. And that's, if there's no development going on, then there's a situation where what if it opens up during, it's exposed or opens during construction, there's another situation. And I think these can be defined in black and white in my mind in the ordinance, and here's how you're going to deal with it. Regarding doing an analysis on these sites, Margaret has brought up the point that some of these sites where you see multiple sinkholes, is it prone to more sinkholes? And we had a representative come from IU geology department who specializes in sinkholes, if you can believe that. And he's started talking about some things that we can check on, and his point was to come up with some parameters in the analysis on these sites where if it's a smaller site, it may not justify a more thorough investigation just because of the cost. But on a larger site, you may want to do a more thorough investigation. And he mentioned that there's different types of imaging that might help identify potential sinkholes beyond LIDAR. Now, some of the, and he's admitted those are costly. So that might not be something we can ask of a developer on a small project. But if we get into another project where the commission feels uneasy about it, we might push for a little more there. And I'm hoping to identify that imaging that he said is available and get that in the technical standards too, so that the MS4 coordinator and the consultant for the developer can do early coordination and agree on which of those sources they're going to pursue to give the best estimate we can on potential hazards of sinkholes.
Okay, and I'm going to say again, I really think that given our topography, the karst formations throughout the county, and I'm being very selfish here as a planning commission member because I've heard this conversation ad nauseum. And it's a conversation we need to have, but at what point are we able to say that the technology exists where we can lean forward and really address these things in the development phase so that we're proactive instead of reactive? And we know for a fact that in terms of legal requirements, we can't bond these. You can't bond for an event that is not predictable or that you cannot anticipate realistically. So I really feel like we need to investigate that a little more deeply. So again, I guess I'm giving you probably the biggest homework assignment I've ever thrown out there, but whatever you can give us over whatever time frame, I really think it needs to be investigated. Based on what you've said, I don't think we're at a point where we can write anything into our ordinance, but I certainly hope that we are looking at that moment in time where we can anticipate this, where we can still encourage development that we have to have, because we continue to have a need for residential development, but we cannot continue to ignore the fact that we are putting residential development in situations where we are at grave risk of losing residential structures or roadway infrastructure. And that's all I have. Thank you for indulging me, everyone.
Jim,
Thanks, Jerry.
I understand what you're saying, and it is a big assignment.
Okay, we have Julie, Jim Stainbrook, Margaret, and then Dave. So go ahead, Julie.
Yep. Piggybacking on what Mr. Pissford was talking about, this is sort of the discussion we had at the admin meeting, and it relates back, and thank you for putting that link in the packet to the Stormwater Board meeting where we had that discussion with the person from IU who has expertise, and recognizing that based on the information we received, it's not just a matter of saying, well, 25 feet, it's fine. 50 feet, it's fine. 100 feet, it's fine. It's a very difficult thing to figure this out, and that's exactly the issue. I'm very concerned about homes that could potentially be in harm's way, and the fact that a developer, may find things are just fine. And what we don't even know what to ask them to look for or what tests to run at this point. So we have a lot to learn. We feel like we're behind and we feel like we're reactive, but really we are ahead of the curve on this because we're thinking about this as soon as we can. And trying to develop something is going to be really hard. It's going to be a difficult process, and we need it to be fair for everybody. But these larger developments are problematic, and it really is, my bigger concern is not if a sinkhole opens up on a common area, which can be fenced off for safety. My concern is why the sinkhole's opening up in the common area or wherever it's opening up. And every time we develop, every time we build, every time we put a road in, every time we change the trajectory of where drainage goes, we're rolling dice. And sometimes that's fine. And most times it seems fine, but given with climate change and the drought cycle that we seem to be under the last couple of falls, we've had very droughty falls, and then we get a lot of rain, and then we get drought. And that triggers and contributes to why these are opening up. As Mr. Quillman pointed out, we're seeing more of these opening up in the community, and we've got to figure out a way to protect homeowners, and that's really the goal. I don't know that this is the way out of it either. I don't know that this is the way out of it, but I'm not sure. But so if Mr. Quillman, if let's say they're in the process of grading for the roadways in this particular development, if they discover another sinkhole, if another sinkhole opens up, what happens? What do they do then? Do they have to stop construction, or they just have to alert you? What's the process, just so we're all aware?
Well, honestly, the way the system is set up now, if a sinkhole opens, I would hope that they would contact our office, but more than likely they would bury it real quick and go on.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter.
Yeah.
There's
and
no
it's not
incentive
saying
for
that
them
they
to do that.
would, it's just that they can. Let's just say,
Yes.
and it's not just these folks, it's a hypothetical. I'm not casting aspersions on any particular development, but we don't have even that basic stopgap in place. So I'm hopeful that we can work on that. I have a couple of other really quick questions, if I might, just for clarification on this project. So looking at the drawing of the platted lots, on the southern edge, lots 48, the number 33, which is common area, and number 32, yep, at the bottom there on the south. So that Rotterdam on the right there is designed to become a through street, correct, if need be? It's sort of drawn in there or not? If there's future development to the south, is that why it's drawn in that way?
Yeah, it will be dedicated right of way, and it can easily then be designed and connected if the land to the south develops.
Okay, but that's not true on the one on the west, which is Windmill Lane, correct?
Correct, and it might be 2 slides up, but we have a cul-de-sac design that allows for that 50-foot right-of-way connectivity to still occur. Might be on a page I did not include. We have it. There is a design within the.
I thought it was an inset on that page. We were looking at 3 pages forward. One more. There. Is that not it?
No, that's not. That's for Rotterdam. So we do have one, and they're going to hopefully use it. Well, it's in the 2 other places. So Holland Drive and to the south. There it is on the plat. I don't know if I included it in this presentation though, but it does have a design where the developer actually has to take out part of the cul-de-sac, so it won't have that bulbous look to it, and install some more grass. That person then gets more grass to mow, but they won't have that odd like bulb out shape if that road continues south.
Okay, and so that's true on Windmill as well as Rotterdam, right?
It is true. Well, good question. You know, would we take out the bulb? You know,
It's in the common area, but most of it, but.
Yeah, and I mean, the sidewalks are going to have to continue to the south. So I imagine there is going to be some adjustment, and it'll be just a variation of the other cul-de-sac design.
Okay.
Good condition that we add a very more specific connectivity plan. And
Right.
make that a condition that it be included and that the highway department signs off on it.
Okay, that would be good. The other question is on another totally different subject. So we've gone sinkholes, cul-de-sacs, and now I'm going to ask a question about density. This property is former AFA, area intended for annexation. So it's under city zoning, because it's called Pro 6.
No, this is a former fringe zone. So it's found in
Right.
chapter 833. And it does have, no one's ever used Pro 6 that we can find in our records. So really everybody's just developing under the RS 3.5, which is basically 3.5 lots per acre is what you can get.
Okay.
So,
And what is the density where the housing is? I know you take the whole area and you look at the total number of acres of the whole area and then the total number of lots minus the common areas, and you come up with the density. What is the density here?
it would maybe be stated in the previous staff report from 2016, but that would also include the phase 1 lots, which are
Right.
a little bit different in size. I don't have that specific number at this time.
Right. I'm curious about it because if because it lapsed, then it goes back to 3.5, and that's an important thing for this plan commission to know, right? Because they still have that underlying zoning right by right of 3.5 Pro 6.
Mhm.
So that's an important thing for us to know, whether that is more dense or less dense than what is presented here in this particular section.
Oh, I'm going to say it's less dense because a lot size could be 0.22 acres.
Mhm.
That is a minimum lot size. A lot of these lots are exceeding that.
Right.
And the common area lots are also kind of like bulking up, and reducing the amount of density really,
Right.
because they're taking up some space as well as the roads.
Right,
So-
because the common lots are not counted as part of the built lots, so it's not part of the density. Right.
Correct.
So I just wanted to throw that out there so everybody knows what we're talking about and what our options are.
They have me flipping through my other report.
Sorry. Because I did look at the first phase and I was like, the density is different, right? And it is on that very first,
It has a common area lot too, though, in the northeast corner.
right,
That you would probably see the preliminary or the final plat.
yeah. Just curious.
And it also has one other larger lot to the
Mhm.
west. That was because there was an old farm pond that they said was a farm pond, but we're treating it as a sinkhole conservancy area on that lot. So I think it was a farm pond, but we're just calling it an SCA just to be safe. So people can't build
Wow.
on it or change the drainage. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll come back to that question, Tammy, if you have a chance to look at it, or I'll try and look at it too. Jim Stainbrook, you had a question?
Jackie, thank you. President Margaret, thank you. I didn't think I did, but Jackie and Tammy, I do have a question now. The street on the east side, the possible connectivity or extension to the south, is that curvature in the street just as projected? Is that a possible indication about a concern for the sinkhole conservancy there? And then before I ask that question, Tammy, I was going to say, I apologize for not having a question, but I did want to express myself and the degree of concern I have, and I suppose in part with something that Commissioner Thomas had said, and others, Jerry, for that matter, that I would be very concerned about having a house with or without children, but having a house in lot 32, or really perhaps a little further north there. So originally that was my intent, Jackie, not to ask a question, but to express that very strong concern about the sinkhole. Having been a former resident of Florida, I don't know if they declare their sinkholes, but there the earth opens up, and I think they've yet to find one gentleman that retired to his bed in his bedroom, and he disappeared for perpetuity. So I don't know that our sinkholes generally do that. But by way of a question, Tammy, it would have to be, is there a recognition that perhaps that someone doesn't want to pave over that sinkhole?
Yeah, and that was recommended at the plat committee. The original design that was presented to staff had part of the right of way in the sinkhole conservancy area, and staff wasn't extremely comfortable with that. So we took that to the plat committee and kind of gave them like, we could do it this way, or we could have them redesign. They chose to redesign, which I think is a good thing. And I will say that our karst is a little bit different than Florida's karst. And Dr. Lee Flory, who was in that link, he mentions that as well. Ours is maybe a little more stable than Florida's karst features.
We hope.
Margaret, you had a question, and then David.
Thank you. And I'd like to, first of all, thank all of the staff and the members of the Plat Commission and the MS4 coordinator, Terry Quillman, for all of the good and hard work you've been doing on this. I mean, this is really, to me, the essence of our responsibility, and that is to protect our community, to further responsible development, and to do the best with the features that we must contend with. That being said, regarding setting aside funds for potential sinkhole failures in the future, as a taxpayer, I would like to say that I do not want to pay for or subsidize the remediation of further failure when a forefront we're seeing, that this is a very fragile area. And as we're in the midst of development, other sinkholes are developing up. And I think that we should revert to our stated market-driven solutions, that the buyer should be aware, and perhaps some property should not be developed, and that homeowners associations should put funds aside. Anything we can do to prevent the disturbance of topsoil is good. And also I'd like to just assert that, sure, it's possible to develop anything. It's just a matter of money. And so the question is, who's going to pay the money? And I'd like to protect the homeowners, or at least I'd like to protect myself as a county member, that I don't want to pay for this. I see it now in the plans. I know we're doing our best, but if this becomes a problem in the future, I don't want to hold the bill for it. So, and I don't want to pay the bill for it. So whatever has to be done now at this point to build on this real estate, it should be the homeowners and the builder's expense. And that's my complete feeling on that.
Thanks, Margaret. I've got Dave and then Jerry.
All right. Yeah, I really like this conversation, and I second Jerry's thoughts there on just finding some way through the ordinance to make this a more predictable process, because I think we probably all agree that this petition is in compliance with our ordinances, and yet sinkhole issues come up a lot. It's we spend a lot of time talking about sinkholes, and so anything to sort of just make this a more predictable process so it doesn't take up as much time in these meetings would be good. Also, that stormwater meeting was really good, and so if you haven't seen that, it was a really good discussion on sinkholes and karst, and I feel like I learned quite a bit just watching that. One thing that was brought up a lot in that meeting was impervious surfaces and how important density of impervious surfaces are with respect to sinkholes. And I just want to make the point that impervious surface density is not the same as housing density. And so, on this piece of land right here, for instance, I can't remember how many housing units there are. Is it roughly 50 or so? You could have the same number of housing units on that land and only take up 50% of the land, if that. And so I think the implications of wanting to deal with sinkholes in a more comprehensive manner one of those implications are, as we, for the areas that are closer to the city of Bloomington, for the areas that are more urban and where higher densities make sense, allowing those higher densities gives us more flexibility to build around, further away from sinkholes, because we're just eating up less land for the same amount of housing. So those are just some points I wanted to make, but I really appreciate this conversation. And again, that stormwater meeting from, I think it was September 9, was really good.
Thanks, Dave. And Jerry, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to get back on video because I wanted you to see my face and see the sincerity in this and the humor as well. Because I don't know if Margaret and I have bragging rights or disavowal responsibilities. We're in total agreement on this. So if anybody thought it was impossible, we've found common ground. I have watched for decades roads go in that were built by contractors or developers who put in really substandard roads, and they knew darn good and well what they were doing was not acceptable. And somehow or another, they got them accepted into the county, and we're repairing them at tens of thousands of dollars every year, sometimes more. And it goes on and on and on for decades. We constantly go back and readdress these issues. And to borrow a popular phrase, I really think that we're at a point where we should be able to follow some science on karst development. There should be some science out there on sinkholes and all this stuff. And the fact that we continue to hold up developments and we continue to labor through our plan commission meetings on these things that really are a matter of science. They're not meant for common people appointed to a county board to address these things. And we need some science. We need some facts. We need a method that is not just financial responsibility for failures. We need some development standards that we hold people to so that we don't have, for those of you who've been around a few years, Furrows was built over on the west side and had a huge sinkhole open up in their parking lot, for crying out loud. That was predictable. That was not an accident. The sinkhole that developed in that parking lot should have been anticipated. I'm an old English teacher and school teacher, and now I'm fortunate and blessed enough to be a school administrator, but I could have even looked at that property when they had the earth moved and known that we were going to have a problem there. And quite honestly, I'm just sick and tired of spending hour upon hour discussing these developments with issues that should be addressed by people who really know what they're talking about and who should give us some solid answers. So all I'm asking is, can we start to look at a way where we look at this in a reasonable fashion, protect homeowners, which we all want to do, and we protect the county taxpayers who don't want to foot the bill for developments that go through either disregarding or unaware of the hydromechanics of the property they're developing. I just think in 2020, we should be past this. I've been on this board for longer than I can even tell you, but I'm tired of it. And I really think it's time that we start getting to a point where we can do something right to protect property owners, to protect developers from making mistakes that are preventable, and to protect county taxpayers from remediating incidents that should have been anticipated and never been allowed to occur. Thank you for indulging me. And again, I'm sorry. I know this should have been a really quick meeting, but I just could not stand this any longer. Thank you.
Okay, I know we have Larry wants to bring up a point. Tammy has an answer to the density question, and then I see Margaret's hand raised. So we'll start with Larry and then go to Tammy.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a couple of things. One, the availability of data since this ordinance was first created has greatly increased. In addition, I-69 created a mass of data through testing and evaluation of the entire corridor of I-69, which goes right through our predominant area where we have sinkholes. One thing we may want to think about in updating the ordinance and updating the zoning map is perhaps it's time to develop a karst protection layer where the sinkhole prone areas, the karst areas where we know there are known karst and known propensity for sinkholes is identified on the map. And basically that would give people, homeowners and developers a heads up prior to purchasing the property. And would also allow us to do some of the things that we've already talked about in the urbanizing area plan, which is to channel low density growth, allow only low density growth in those areas where there's known karst, to add an additional layer of protection. Right now, it's just an after the fact discovery that there's karst on the property when somebody comes in to do a subdivision or an improvement location permit. And I think it would be really good to try to deal with that to the best ability we have with the current technology and current knowledge to identify these areas in advance, put them into our zoning map, and then utilize that to develop standards for development of those areas.
Thank you, Larry. Tammy, did you have an answer to Julie's density question?
I think so, and I think my math is correct. Maybe Jerry can check me on this one later. So this phase 2 and phase 3 is 14.18 acres. And by right, you can create lots that are 0.22 acres in size. So if you do the division, you get 64 lots. They could do 64 lots. What they're proposing is 35 lots, 2 of which are common area. So I just wanted to put that one out there. Phase 1, which is just to the north, was 9 acres. They could have done 41 lots up there, and instead there's 20 that are platted. So I know that we're not taking into consideration the road right of way and some of the other infrastructure, but they could have designed this a little differently and gotten a lot more density. They're almost losing, not quite half density, but over a third, I would say, of what they could have done. So does that help answer your question, Julie?
Yeah, she's raising her thumb. Okay. And then Margaret, you had a question?
I just, going forward, I would just like to, I would just like to be able to protect the rest of the county for having to pay for failures. So in a subdivision like this, before, it sells, there should be some mechanism for collecting some kind of escrow or bond or insurance policy that is borne by the homeowners, so that they are protected from, or so that the rest of the county is protected from having to pay for this failure. So I appreciate everyone's patience and indulgence. I think the nature of this is difficult because we do have moving lands, we have imperfect information, and on things like this, we may never have perfect information. So caution to me is important. And then having, I think more importantly than an answer, but a process by which we evaluate, what kind of certified engineer certified in which areas could evaluate and recommend yes or no we build, or if the answer is yes, how do we remediate, and that we should have this process of evaluation done professionally. I know that Terry Quillman has done a great job, but the burdens lie too heavily on his shoulders. And I think that we need to be aware of that as well. Okay, so is there any more discussion from members of the Plan Commission? If there's none, is the petitioner present, and would the petitioner like to address the Plan Commission?
Yeah, this is Don Turner with Hybrid Investment Group.
Don, you're a little bit quiet. Can you move closer to the microphone?
Let me try this. Okay, can you hear me now?
A little
Is that
bit.
better? Oops.
Still pretty quiet.
How about now?
Yes.
Better? Okay, great. Just in general, obviously that was a lot to take in. In terms of obviously what we need to look at here is really insurance is going to be the most effective way to handle this in terms of the sinkhole. Obviously, we're going to require, or you're going to require the deed covenants, which we would automatically do anyway in a situation like this. In terms of, the best way to take care of it is, I think, Margaret, you talked about, it's the risk. First of all, it's our risk, the developer's risk, until such time as it's sold or potentially sold on some type of contract. I would assume that anyone that would buy this would want to look, have some kind of soil exploration done. But they would be the only ones who could get an insurance program, because they own the lot. So the homeowners association doesn't own the lot, would, not necessarily be able to take care of it, whereas an insurance program of some sort would be able to handle this. So that's kind of what I have to say on that. Other than that, I've heard a lot of good things about what's, I think our concerns or your concerns in terms of selling these properties if there's a potential problem on it. We certainly don't want to do that either. And the other thing I'd say is get geotechnical engineers involved in your discussion as you move forward, because they're the ones who are going to be able to define what's down there, how to repair. Just as we hired Patriot Engineering to do this, you should include those type of people in your discussions, because they know how to fix them. They're on top of how to investigate subsurface conditions and might help you in designing something for the future. Other than that, I'm comfortable with everything that's been said, I think, and I think that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is another member in favor of the petition present who would like to address the Plan Commission? If there's none, is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to the proposal and the petition? Jackie, do you see anybody?
I'm not seeing anyone. If anyone wishes to speak, just unmute your mic or put something in the chat.
Okay, well, I come back to the commission, see if there's any further discussion, and if not, we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford.
There being no comments further, in case number 2008-SPP-03, Holland Fields Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Phases 2 and 3. This is a request for a major subdivision preliminary plat to subdivide one parcel into 35 acres. Based on the fact that this has previously been reviewed, with further information, I should say this is located at 790 East Holland Drive in the zone of RE 3.5/PRO6, 14.8 acres in Perry Township. And based on the fact that this has previously been reviewed, and this is a renewal of that previous approval, given the findings of fact numbers 1 through 15 in tonight's packet, I move approval based on the findings of fact and subject to any conditions therein. That is my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Just to clarify, does that include a waiver of the final hearing?
Yeah, I didn't I didn't see that on there in my heading, but yes, that includes the waiver of final hearing. And just in addition that we all hope that the developer will proceed with all due caution.
And Bernie, did you second it, Bernie?
Accepted, yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion is on to approve petition 2008-SPP-03, the Holland Fields Major Subdivision Phase 2 and 3 preliminary plat, including a waiver of the final hearing for 35 parcels on 13 acres located in Section 21 of Perry Township.
Correction, that's 14.18 acres, please.
Okay, the agenda may be wrong then. Anyway, a vote in favor is a vote to approve the preliminary plat, subject to the conditions set forth in the report. Bernie Garitas?
Yes.
Jeff McKim? Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook?
No.
Julie Thomas?
A reluctant yes.
Okay. Amy Thompson?
Yes.
David Warren?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Only because the by right ability to build is worst case scenario than the one presented before us. I feel compelled to reluctantly vote yes.
Okay, Tron and Ryan Randolph.
First, I apologize. I'm on my phone. My power just went out, but luckily I was able to jump back on for the vote. And I kind of want to echo what Margaret just said. Feels like we don't have everything sorted out. I love the discussion today, but I'm going to vote in favor. And I have one additional comment because I don't want to drag the meeting on. I love the new presentation. This is the first time I stared at the computer screen looking at the presentation the whole time. And thank you so much for making it better for us to view during these digital meetings. My compliments to the planning department. Thank you. And my vote's yes.
Okay, the motion is approved by a 7-1 margin.
Okay, then we're moving on to reports. Mr. Wilson, do you have a report from planning?
Yeah, I think, Tammy, do you have a slide for us?
You're on mute, Tammy.
There you go. We're bringing this to the Plan Commission. The North Park, if you remember, the North Park subdivision plat required construction of an additional road after there was a certain tipping point in the number of lots that were subdivided. And with the rehabilitation hospital project, it triggered that tipping point. And the construction schedule was approved by the Plan Commission, and they ran into some difficulties with the timeline, and it's going to be extended somewhat. The timeline is going to be changed a little bit. Planning Department went ahead and approved that change. We're bringing it to you tonight for basically ratification and to answer any questions. And Tam, if you want to add any more information to that, that'd be great.
Right, they're just wanting to push the final deadline back by 3 months because there has been this 3-month delay in kind of finalizing their final plat. We are just in the final stages of wrapping
And
up all of it.
and the reason for the delay is, I think, a delay in getting some of the state permits they need to do the project.
That too.
So we did want to inform the Plan Commission and let you know of our action. There is a tight deadline for getting this project done, and we cannot issue building permits for the hospital project unless we basically change this timeline in order to issue the permits.
Do you need a motion for ratification?
I don't think we do. I think we just wanted to bring it forward. We think we have the ability to ratify it, but we didn't want to do it in secret.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Schilling, is there any report from legal?
No report.
No report?
No, no report.
Okay, that's good news. No news is good news. Okay, well then, is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Before you entertain a motion to adjourn, Madam Chair, if I might,
Yes, Mr. Pittsford.
I've already extended the meeting a little bit, so I'm going to push my luck. I just really want to say that regarding the joint meeting between the Plan Commission and the commissioners last week, regarding the approval of a memorandum of agreement to settle legal action, I was more than a little disappointed, and that is not to say that I was disappointed with any particular department or individual within the county structure, but I felt like there were a significant number of plan commissioners who were reaching conclusions without adequate evidence. And I know that this concern had been addressed in the executive committee. And I feel like when legal action, especially when legal action is involved, that some report should come out of the executive committee to the members of the Plan Commission so that we have an understanding of what has been discussed. I did take the time to review the court records using mycase.in.gov so that I was a little more aware of what had transpired that brought us to the point of reaching a settlement outside of court. I think it's unfortunate that so many people involved, both appointed and elected members of both bodies, seemed to be either disregarding those facts of evidence or were totally unaware of them. And I just think going forward, the one area where I do have a say is in the Plan Commission as a 1/9 of the body. I feel like we should have had more information forthcoming from the executive committee. And it's my request that in the future, especially in those instances where litigation is involved, that we receive some information out of the executive committee. Obviously, we have an executive committee for a reason, but there should be some reports out of there that give us some guidance and some information so that we can reach our own conclusions. And I felt that was insufficient in this instance. And again, I'm not disparaging anyone for the work that they did, but I just felt like there were so many people blindly following a discussion that really focused on the minutia of an agreement over which we had no say. And we would have been better able to communicate to the executive committee our wishes had we known in advance. Thank you for the indulgence, and that's all I have to say.
Julie, you have your hand raised before we adjourn.
Yeah, I just want to say that we were under a strict requirement not to talk about litigation, and we didn't. So we did what we were asked to do. Thank you.
I understand. Thank you, Julie.
Dave, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Could the planning staff just give us a real quick update on the CDO process, where you are and when we might expect to see another update on that?
Sure. So we are still working on phase 1 drafting of that module. And so we're hopeful that we'll get that in time for the November regular session of the Plan Commission for review. So we're going to take that. Usually what we do is we take a week and do staff revisions just to make sure we're meeting statutory requirements and nothing's too outlandish before it comes before the Plan Commission. And then we would release that and also notify the public of that release of that draft. And then we would kind of take some comments and make changes. We would not approve module 1 at this point. It all has to be adopted together. So it's just a kind of a checkpoint, if you will, and then changes can be made all the way up until the point of adoption.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I got other questions now. So Bernie, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is just general question on, do we have an idea when we think we're going to have in-face meetings, at least some function of the Plan Commission being together and still maybe doing a public Zoom or something along those lines?
That's a good question, Bernie. I think we're relying on the state's guidance at this point. There is allowance of virtual meetings. I don't know if others want to weigh in on that, but Julie, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that hopefully at our commissioners meeting tomorrow. So.
And I saw you had a note about the ordinance review committee. That is a good point. We do want to try to utilize them. And I think the next ordinance review committee is on November 9th, if I remember correctly. So that might be good timing to have them weigh in as well before it gets to the Plan Commission or the public. Yeah.
I'd like to just say one thing in response to Mr. Pittsford's comments about the process of the executive board meeting. I want to tell him that I concur with him. I do believe that the whole Plan Commission should be more involved in legal matters like this when possible. And I just am, I wished it could have been different is all I can say. I wished it could have been different. So, but thank you for speaking up about that. And hopefully in the future that can be taken into consideration when negotiations begin.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I don't see any other comments or questions from the Plan Commission.
Thank you, Jackie. You did a great job. So did you, Drew and Tammy. Thank you. And Larry, thanks.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
All
All
right.
those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's no one opposed. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.